Hello and welcome to ICON UK January 2017 Around the Table. It's good to see everyone here. We've had a great set of registrations for this, so hopefully you'll all get some value out of this, and I know people will be joining all the time. So Around the Table, it's basically ICON UK trying to do something throughout the year and not just once a year in September. For those of you who have not been and watched our webinars before, we record them and put them on YouTube later on. But this month we have a topic of what's new in the cloud, which we have every month. So IBM release a whole bunch of what do? They release a whole bunch of options and features and stuff to the cloud all the time, and it's silent slipstream in, and nobody ever knows what's going on or what's there. So what we do is we have Leon Beckett and Chris Moore from the UK IBM technical sales team tell us on a monthly basis what's new and what's happened in the last month. I think this will be a 2-month roundup because we didn't do one in December. And then we're going to be joined, or are being joined, by Barry Rosen and Scott Souder, who will take us through Verse On-Premises and what's been released there and what we can expect, or some of what we can expect to see coming up in the future. And I suspect they will keep a few fireworks back and a few sparklers back ready for Connect in February. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Chris, who's going to take us through an update on what's new in the world of IBM Collaboration. Over to you, Chris.
Hello, good day everyone. So I'm just going to take you through what's going on this month, and as Tim has said, this is a 2-monthly one, although not much happened in December because it's Christmas, but there is quite a bit to talk about. There's been updates in Verse and Connections Cloud, and Leon will also be talking to some of the details that are coming up around Connect, and Tim's right, there will be sparklers and there will be fireworks, and real ones, I hope. So let's go straight into what is new and what's coming with IBM Verse. Calendar Inbox. It is coming this month. The administrators of you out there of Connections Cloud would have got a notification that the rollout of the Calendar Inbox user interface will be coming out on the 23rd of January. And this is basically a view of being able to see all of your calendar notifications coming in an order of when they're coming in your diary rather than when they just happen to come into your inbox. And this is really just the start of the new view of your calendar moving forward. So there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff to see around that moving throughout the year. The ability to sign and encrypt your email and calendar notifications as standard is now a setting in the Verse settings page, which, as we've said on previous month's calls, now has its own dedicated page, along with Mail, Calendar, and Out of Office. So there's now a security menu option in there, so every user can now go and do that for all mail and calendar messages sent rather than on an individual basis, which of course you can still do. So that's there now. Another thing that's now there's the support for the IBM Client Application Access plugin support for Outlook. So if you are using Verse, if you're using iNotes, you can use ICAA to access Domino applications through the web browser or through a separate window as it is now. But now Outlook, Microsoft Outlook is now aware of those links. So if you have ICAA installed and you click on a doc link or a database link within an email or a calendar entry in Outlook, it will launch ICAA and direct you to that particular document or view within the Domino application it's taking you to. So that's there, so that's great. And with the support of Outlook for Mail, which is provided by the IBM Mail add-in, with the support of Mail, so looking at Mail using Outlook, the provisioning of your organization directory in Outlook was a manual process that is now automatic, which is great, one less thing for your admins or users to have to set up. So that'll support, with that as part of the configuration, you'll be able to do auto lookup of when you're typing in a person's name in the to field of a calendar entry or an email, so you can do name lookup within the organizational directory straight off the bat. So that was Verse. So let's focus now on Connections Cloud. And the big one for this month is Box. So we now have out-of-box pardon the pun, out-of-the-box integration with Box within Connections Cloud. Because, of course, as most of you are hopefully aware, IBM have a strategic partnership with Box, and that is for many different reasons, not just from an IBM Collaboration standpoint, but this is really to offer our customers choice in using the best of breed tools to do whatever they want to do. And of course, in Box's case, it's sharing and working around files and managing content, and in the very near future, workflow as well. But if you're a customer and you want to use Box, you can now do that within the context of Connections Cloud. Historically, you've been able to do it with Verse for quite some time, so you can pick files from Box, but now it's more generally integrated throughout the Connections platform, more exclusively with Connections communities. And I'm going to take you through a showcase of what that actually looks like. So here, what you're looking at now is a community. Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen, so let's do that. Okay, let's start sharing my screen. Okay, share my screen. So, what you're about to see, once refreshed, is a community within Connections Cloud within the Silvergreen organization. This is one that's been set up for a new clothing line called Zetaware. Or Zetaware if you're British. So here we're sharing files, we're working through different collateral for releasing this new clothing line, but we've added a document library widget that is actually showcasing a folder that lives within Box. Delivering this is as simple as ticking a box in the administration console of Connections Cloud. You tick a box and you get this new widget that you can add multiple times actually to your community through the Add Apps tray. And here I've selected the demo files option. This allows me to navigate through all of the files within this library. And in the context of using Box, I might be working with the leadership team for this new clothing line to work around and using some of the kind of full of fidelity file share and sync features the Box provides, and in potentially some workflow to work through my files before I publish them to the wider community. So that's what it looks like in terms of the community widget, and I could do drag and drop, all the usual stuff, and commenting, liking, following, and even sharing individual files. So if I take this this particular image of a coffee table, I have all the controls that I have within Box, but from within the context of my community here. What we also have is integration to the rich text editor within Connections Cloud. So if I come to a wiki page, for example, so I've got a wiki page that's needed to organize all of the content. So here I'm just going to add some things to a page to show you what we can actually do. So I'm going to just go into edit mode. This page, just wait for everyone to catch up there. So what I mean by rich text editor is the ability to control the content within a wiki page or a blog post. So what I mean is this area with all the controls at the top of this editor bar here. What I'm going to do is just create a new line here because I'm going to want to embed a piece of content. So because I have the Box integration enabled, I have the option to embed content from Box. And that could be something simple as a PDF file, or it could be a video, which is what I'm going to do in this case. So I'm going to pick just a Connections demo video here. I can choose the access type, people within my company, and then straight away embed that as if I was embedding a YouTube video into the context of this wiki page. So very quick and easy. Just find the file, select the file, and all the page and all the content is in there. That's an example of a video that I'm just going to quickly embed a file from that is not a video. So I can take this Word document. So rather than having to download the file, if it's in Box, then we can just embed the preview so everyone can navigate the file if they want to. Also, one of the other things in CK Editor, just the last thing, is that you can embed links to files from Box. So under the typical link page, the link panel here, you can embed URLs or links to existing Connections files. You can now link to a file in Box, and it will just embed that file straight off the bat. Also, just to finish on the Box thing, some of you may be thinking, is Box replacing files in Connections? It's not. Like I mentioned, it's essentially we're giving our clients choice of what they use. And you'll hear in Connect a very clear message that we're not moving away from connections files. Watch this space. But you do have the ability to deactivate connections files in the user interface if you so wish. So if you want to just use Box for Everything in Connections Cloud, then that is available as a tick box in the administration console. So, refresh my page, take control and see. Thanks. So let's just take back to the deck. So just move on to the next slide. So those were the updates. There's more to come next month, especially around Connect. So I'm just going to now pass on to Leon to cover what's coming later on in the year.
Thank you very much, Chris. So first of all, I just wanted to start with some of the latest announcements that have happened since we had our last webinar. And first and foremost, it was the announcement of the IBM Champion for 2017. And so just wanted to pass on all of our congratulations to all of the IBM Champions who were announced, including our very own Tim Clark and Steve Madonna, part of Icon, and everyone else. So I just invite everybody
and Sharon James.
All of the, and Sharon James as well. I know I created this slide before I was aware of that. I just wanted to pass on all of our congratulations, and also if you wanted to, the link at the bottom, ibm.biz/ICS Champions 2017. You can read the entire list of all of the champions and also pass on your messages as well. Moving on, I just wanted to also highlight again, to Connect 2017, registrations are open, so please feel free to go along and register, ibm.com/connect. Details are starting to come out about the agenda, the sessions that are going to be at Connect, so you can preview, see what's going to happen at the event, and take a look. And also, our guest speaker has also been announced. Dr. Sheena Iyaga, apologies for the pronunciations was wrong, but she is considered one of the most forefront experts around the concept of choice. So researching how people struggle with choice when they're inundated with too many options, when the psychology behind choice, and essentially what people go through when they are confronted with choice. I actually had a quick look at one of her TED Talks yesterday, just to kind of get an idea of what it's all about. And it's really, really interesting. I really recommend people take a look at that. And she will also be speaking at IBM Connect. So go along, register, take part, have a look at her talk, and also take part in some of the fantastic sessions that are going to be in San Francisco in February. Also, connected to Connect is the Connect 2017 Hackathon that will be happening on February the 20th as well in San Francisco. So if you happen to be going to Connect, or you happen to be in San Francisco, then I would recommend, if you want to get hands-on experience building cognitive collaboration solutions, then sign up for the hackathon. So ibm.biz/Connect 2017 Hackathon. It's free to participate. There are some prizes on offer, courtesy of OpenNTF. And no matter who you are, please go along and sign up. So if you're a customer, if you're a business partner, a champion, if you're a student, developer, whoever you are, go along, take part, and see what you can build with with cognitive and collaboration combined. Also, for the IBM business partners only, just to give you notification that NewWayToLearn is coming back around for this year. So it will be starting again on 16th of April 2017. Running for 6 weeks, so make sure you're signed up, got notifications for the education program, and also if you want to actually help and deliver some of the special sessions, then please reach out to Alan Hamilton @uk.ibm.com, and let them know what you would like to help with, and I'm sure you'll be more than happy to get your assistance. And lastly, I just wanted to highlight that, as you probably guessed as well, IBM Verse On-Premises has now made available as of the 30th of December. And rather than steal the thunder of our guest speakers and tell you all about it, I'll pass you on to Barry and Scott to tell us all about Verse On-Premises. So Barry and Scott, if you want to take control and share, and over
Excellent.
to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to start off and then we will, I'll pass it over to Mr. Scott. So I'm going to kind of breeze through my section here because a lot of this is just general overview, so we can kind of get into the meat of the deck here. Just our standard disclaimer here. Here's what we're going to kind of cover today: value of Verse On-Prem, entitlement, extensibility, and some of the technical requirements. And we will have a brief overview of what's next and what to expect at Connect. So just from an overview perspective, as we just stated, congratulations to everybody. We were able to get this out at the very end of the year in 2016. So we have Verse On-Premises version 1.0 in the market, and we're currently working very hard to put out some additional releases as well and improve upon the 1.0 release. So, what are the value here is that this is for our on-premises customers where they can leverage their investment in IBM, their existing Domino infrastructure, and provide the same rich experience to which our Verse users in the cloud are accustomed to. And you saw in the previous overview some of the new things that are coming in Verse in the cloud. So it's nice to see that, because what we know is that everything that we see in the cloud, we would like to eventually provide that to our on-premises customers as well. So some of those things like the calendar inbox will eventually make it down to the on-prem version as well. And basically you can deploy this by installing additional infrastructure for elements for search, and then optionally connections as well. So here I'm just going to kind of skim through this, because basically, the business value for Verse On-Prem is the same as Verse in the cloud, as the UI is exactly the same. Our goal is to keep that as close as possible. Obviously, as the cloud is a continuous delivery model, once we release on-prem, there will be some lag time between releases and what you see in the cloud and what you see on-prem, but our goal is to keep that as consistent as possible. So obviously, we've talked about Verse being mail that understands you, less clutter, more clarity, and connecting the me to we. So I'm hoping, and I'm pretty sure that all of you have seen this, so I'm going to kind of slide through this pretty quickly. This is mail that understands you, less clutter, more clarity, connecting the me to we. Why are we doing this? So we're taking some of the best things about Verse in the cloud, and we're extending this to our on-prem customers. So here's a screenshot of what the UI looks like. This is an inbox with a search here by name, so faceted search. So here are the things that we've taken from the cloud, and we know that are some of the top features that we're extending to on-prem as well. The important to me bar. This is where you can visually see people that you do a lot of interactions with, and you can quickly click on them to get information about them. And this is kind of the important to me aspect. Who are the people that I'm interacting with? Who are the people that I need to pay attention to? And some quick ways to filter that information. And with the Connections integration on-prem, which is also entitled via your notes in Domino, SNS, you can see the pictures of these people as well. If you don't have the connections, you will just get the circle with the initials in it. You won't get the picture part of that. The modern interface, which is something that we've really touted. This is the design thinking that we went through, the exercise that we went through for Verse is what is useful, what is relevant to the end user, and what is somewhere where you can live in a long period. A lot of your time in your day is spent in your email, so what can we do to make that easier? Faceted search, this is a big one. This is one of the biggest improvements over standard notes and Domino search is this faceted search, and we've extended that to on-prem as well, where you can refine by time, folder, sender, date, this week, previous emails, that type of thing, to make the search a much better experience as well. The universal calendar bar, this is a really nice feature as well. When you're in your inbox, You can glance at the bottom to kind of see where you are at in your day, what you've got coming, and then you can click on one of those items to quickly get into that meeting. Waiting for and needs action. This is a way to mark mails coming in and going out as need action, and waiting for as a form of follow-up. This kind of replaces the to-do, the traditional to-dos in notes. So if you're waiting for something from someone, or you need to perform an action, you can add fields, you can add notes to yourself, and it's a really good way to follow up and keep track of what you need to do or what you're waiting for from other people as well. And just a quick quote here, just on some of the things that people really like about this UI. So some of the additional values here is the consistency with the Verse Cloud, as we stated up front, as that's one of our goals here, is to make sure that we have a consistent UI across cloud and on-prem. We want to give our customers the best-in-class functionality that the cloud offers while leveraging their existing investments with Domino. As in the cloud, you've got the secure offline access via a browser. That's a first in the market, especially for on-prem, to have that secure access via a browser. If you want to, what you can do is you can kind of go away from deploying a rich client like Notes or Outlook. We obviously, we talked about the things that we'll be seeing at Connect with choice. One of the goals here is that we provide our customers with choice so that they can provide their end users with choice. They don't have to worry about how their end users access their mail. They can give them choice. But one of the nice things about Verse on-prem is that if you'd like to stop deploying a rich client, it gives you the option to do that. As we saw ICAA mentioned as well earlier, via Verse, you can optionally not deploy the Notes client, have ICAA and Verse, and you've got a complete solution for your end users without having a full Notes client. The other thing that we'll talk about is integration and extensibility. Scott's going to cover that in detail. Also reduce the training costs with a simple, intuitive UI, and smooth the transition to an IBM Connections Cloud experience. So if you're in a hybrid environment, you've got users that are in the cloud, you've got users on-prem. Now your on-prem users can kind of have the exact same experience that your cloud users have without any difference in that. And if you do plan to go to the cloud in the future, this is a really nice way to smooth that transition to that experience. So here are some of the post-GA considerations, and Scott will cover some of this as well with the extensibility capabilities. We've got several slides detailing that. Some of the things that we're going to be looking at after GA, which we just did, is integrating same-time awareness and chat, as well as possibly other offerings integration with other applications and solutions, such as possibly Watson Workspace or any other options or applications that we have as well. We do have box integration out of the box at GA. And then hybrid configuration is something under configuration as well. And we will have full details on the post-GA roadmap at Connect 2017. Scott's got a presentation at Connect 2017 where he will go through the roadmap in details. So what do you need? Oops, I went the wrong way there. So what do you need here? You don't have to purchase anything. As long as you are an existing customer on SNS with the CAL, it is entitled via the CAL. You are entitled to download this. So you just go to Passport Advantage, search for Verse on-prem or search for the part number, and if you're current on your SNS or your CALs, you will be able to access it. And it requires the Domino Fixed Pack 7, and it comes with a Fixed Pack as well. So those are the requirements there. Connections is not required. It is recommended. That is also part of your Notes and Domino entitlement for files and profiles. I've got a little asterisk here that files entitles you to use the file viewer, but not the editing components of that file viewer. There's some details in this link on how to find that latest version of the file viewer so that you can view those files as well. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Scott here to talk about extensibility and integration.
Cool, thanks, Barry. If you'll just stay right in the share there, that'd be fantastic. So you can go to the next.
You got it.
So, guys, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. We're excited about this product that a lot of us worked our tails off on to sort of get over the finish line at the end of 2016. We had high hopes of completing the product by the early part of December so that we could all enjoy some holiday time with families, but we got to enjoy our holiday time with families, but I'll sort of temper that with the fact that we shipped the product on December 30th. So you do the math on what we were doing with a lot of our holiday time this year. Great team of developers have been working on this, and the same team actually growing will be doing some additional work as we have already turned the corner into 2017. As Barry mentioned, we're going to take you through at Connect. If you happen to attend, we'll take you through the roadmap in detail. If you're not attending this year, we'll provide that information shortly thereafter. You'll be able to grab the presentation and whatnot. So, Barry, go ahead to the next slide. There we go. Nope, go the other way, dude. Thank you, sir. So one of the things Barry stressed, and you're going to hear me probably say this more than once, one of the items, bullet points on one of his charts was about consistency. We are doing our dead level best to make Verse, the experience from an end user perspective, make it consistent with what you will have in cloud. We don't. We fully believe that customers will operate in a mixed environment. There's no one environment, it seems, that is purely in the cloud or purely on premises. These days, there's sort of a mix depending on what the business need is. And as a result, the desire is to keep things very consistent. That doesn't mean necessarily identical, at least not from a timing perspective. IBM is there's no pretending that IBM is sort of morphed into this cloud-first machine. So you will see us, and this is really good news, I think, from an on-premises perspective. You will see us most of the time vet new features and new innovations in the cloud first, and then quickly turn and pull those same innovations into the on-premises experience, and that's certainly true for what we're doing with the Verse product line. A perfect example of that, before we dive into some of the extensibility thoughts, is how we're integrated with Box. You saw a demo a few minutes ago about how easy it is in Connections to use Verse and Connections Cloud now. Well, we have the same integration with Box for an on-premises user that we have for Verse if you happen to be a cloud user. So I just wanted to point that out. That's a really nice level of integration. You have a choice, obviously, if you're working in a cloud environment or even an on-premises environment. You've got a choice whether you're using the files portion of Connections or you're using Box to store files, or even locally, whatever you need. We're going to provide that level of flexibility. So you can go ahead into the next slide, Barry. So I want to switch here for just a second. Instead of talking about integration so much, I want to talk about how we're extending the product. All of the things that I'm going to talk about now are a bit futures. They're just now coming into the Verse Web product. And I want to sort of set the table, if you will, for what you can expect over the course of 2017 if you are a partner or you are a person who has developed an application for your organization and you're thinking, gee, I wish I could wire that into the Verse app somehow. I want to assure you that we are doing things that will allow you to do that. And so everything I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes here are things that you either can do in cloud now or you will just eminently be able to do in cloud from an integration and extensibility perspective. But then, as I said before, consistency is important, so we want to make sure if you're an on-premises customer or partner, you'll be able to do the very same thing there. So let me take you through a couple of things. One of the points of integration that we feel is pretty important is you ought to be able to do some stuff with that business card. The blue box there in the upper right-hand corner, anytime you click on a person's face or the icon representing a person anywhere in Verse, you have access to some profile information. Depending on the context of what you're doing, you may have more things appearing on that business card at some point than you do at perhaps another point. But the whole goal here is that that card ought to be flexible. I ought to be able to put some things on there that I want to put on there, and we are absolutely giving you that ability to do that. Another example is whenever well, let me just tease you with one thing for just a second. Most of you on the call probably know who Chris Crummy is. Chris and a team of several of us have been working on the demonstration that you'll get to see at Connect in San Francisco in just a matter of weeks now. And I'll just tease you with a little bit how there's some pretty cool things that start to appear on that business card. Tim mentioned fireworks, and you're going to see some pretty slick things that we now have the ability to let you choose to sort of flexibly place on that business card inside of Verse. Today in cloud, coming soon in on-premises. We also think that you may want to do some things as you compose a message, right? So there's an extension point there. The box in the very middle, let's see if I can get my pointer going here. The box in the very middle here is simply showing you how you will now be able to extend the menu as you actually create a message. And you can put your own items on there. We have a pattern for how to do that, and we'll show you how to do that. That's an obvious and very just a very simple way to take and embed or include things that you might want to include from your own application storehouse into Verse. Then we also think from the preview perspective, if I'm over in the preview portion of Verse, reading through messages, sorting through a thread or whatever, there may be some actions that I want to take as I'm actually reading messages. So obvious extension points there up until now where you really haven't been able to do much, but now with some of the patterns and the development work we've done behind the scenes, we provide some very simple, very elegant ways for you to do extendability kinds of things on those 3 points. So Barry, let's go to the next slide. I think I've captured a couple of things that sort of talk about what I've been describing. Yeah. So when you click on an action, you'll be able to either fire up a separate iframe or fire up a URL that you've provided. Different things that we might be able to do to allow you to do the integration that you're trying to achieve there. The calendar bar, there's a whole another set of APIs that we are actually working on to allow additional levels of extensibility and integration with things, as Barry talked about, the calendar bar that's always present in your inbox. We're providing some hooks for how you might actually do some things there as well. That's a bit further off in 2017. I'm a little more interested at this point in getting the action contribution things sort of in place, and that's where the primary focus is. But there is a team that is focused now on developing the set of APIs that you'll be able to use either in an on-premises world or in cloud to do things in the Verse calendar. So got that to look forward to. You go to the next slide, Barry. LiveText is another one that comes up frequently. You would expect that to be the case for people who are using, used to using the notes environment. LiveText was something that was introduced several years ago. Essentially, gives intelligence based on pattern recognition to some level of textual representation. Maybe it's a part number, or maybe it's a flight number, or a telephone number, or a fill in the blank. Whatever pattern recognition you have created, if it appears in the context of a mail message or a calendar entry, you'll have the ability to to actually take action on that. So access, in most cases, to some set of microservices or another site or another fill in the blank. LiveText is very flexible. The point being that we now have that ability to do that same pattern recognition inside of Verse. Interestingly enough, Barry and I have been having some conversations about this week because we have a nifty little tool that if you are a Notes user today, we're going to provide that will allow you to take live text widgets that you've created over in Notes, pop them out, and instantiate them over in Verse. No coding required, just an easy way for you to take specific widgets that do pattern recognition types of things for you and push them over into the Verse environment. That sets the stage for a lot of things for us, quite honestly. It obviously lets you reuse some stuff that you're used to using over in Notes, but it also sets the stage for us to do additional types of recognition, and I'm not going to spill the beans too much here, but it sets the table for us to start to think a little more deeply about recognizing things that might have hooks on into cognitive experiences. So imagine if Tim sent me an email message that said, "Hey Scott, would you please send me your presentation for the Icon UK event today as soon as possible?" There's a lot of text in that, but there's also a lot of things that are potentially recognizable as long as I have this live text capability. There's some parsing that I might be able to do that says that, hey, you know what, I can start to do some interpretation for you and say, hey, Tim wants something. There's an action there. Here's the action, and there's a time frame. So start to kind of put some of those pieces together. You can see why live text is all of a sudden so important for us to make sure we have inside of Verse, and so we're doing that. All right, next slide. Another point of integration is something that we refer to as essentially an API that we call onBeforeSend, and that's just a technical mumbo-jumbo to say that there are times where when I'm about ready to send an email message to somebody, maybe I'm legally required, or from a compliance perspective, I'm required to do something with that message before I send it. Good example that I'm familiar with firsthand is what our colleagues in Australia do. They have a government protected marking requirement that a lot of organizations have to comply with. That before they send the message, it has to be marked as you can see there. There's some choices. This is personal, this is confidential, this is fill in the blank. But a way to do that and hook into Verse before you actually send the message to somebody, this is a perfect example of why we need this onBeforeSend sort of interrupt inside of Verse. And it's a great little feature. There's some obvious things there that you probably got to be cognizant of before you enable this kind of feature, meaning that if you're going to modify a subject line to put the word confidential or the word personal or whatever in there, you want to make sure that we're not allowing you to actually modify the body of the message, right? So there's some things there that are kind of interesting from a programmatic perspective, but the feature itself giving you this kind of extensibility of the Verse product is, we think, very, very important. Another example of that, take it out of the context of what I just described for, marking something personal or restricted or whatever. Think about in the Asian market, oftentimes, as an English-speaking guy, names are pretty simplistic for us. In the Asian market or in some of the Middle Eastern markets, names get incredibly complex, at least from my perspective, right? And so maybe there is a custom name picker or a custom addressing capability that instead of just typing in Scott Souder or Tim Clark, I need the ability to say, hey, this is his first name, this is the department he works in, this is the floor he works on, this is the sky's the limit in terms of what that could actually look like. It could even It could even be a customer developed customized name picker that we would allow you to hook in via this onBeforeSend kind of tool that I'm describing. So lots of flexibility there, lots of cool stuff that you can kind of start thinking, I'm an innovator. I can create a solution that would take advantage of that type of capability, and you can see pretty quickly that there's some pretty cool things there. So I want to just give you that little sort of taste of some extensibility things. There are others that we are working on that I'm not going to talk about right now, but the APIs for calendar and mail I mentioned earlier, those are pieces of work that are well underway. We'll be saying a ton more about some of the extensibility and integration things. We'll be showcasing a lot of that, as you'll see in the opening general session demonstration at Connect at the end of February. So look forward to that. All right, Barry, you can go to the next slide. I think we've got a couple other things here to hit very quickly. Let's talk about technical requirements for a second. Next slide. Yeah. We've done our dead level best to make sure that the infrastructure, the environment that is sort of a prerequisite to being able to do this verse thing on premises, we've done our dead level best to keep that as simple as possible. If you've been hanging around Barry and me for very long at all, you know some of the underpinnings of Verse in the cloud. It's cloud, for crying out loud. There's all kinds of assets, all kinds of resources at our disposal as a result of being in cloud, not the least of which is an unbelievably powerful search mechanism. Referring to the Souder, the Apache Lucene-based Souder search capability, distributed search index, massively expandable, massively performant, but not something that is easily containable in an on-premises world. So we had a major design hurdle to overcome as we created Verse on-premises. We didn't want to impose Souder on you to be able to run Verse in an on-premises world. So we have this capability. Many of you will recognize it. It's the GTR search, the full text search capability inside of Domino. We dusted it off. We fixed a lot of the challenges that customers, partners had reported over the years in search. And we have implemented a very effective, very performant search capability based on facets, just like in Verse Cloud, that you can do from an on-premises perspective. The index itself is stored on Domino, so it's familiar stuff. You're not faced with having to learn how to, manage and deploy and work with Souder. Nope, it's familiarity that we're after here. So we are using Domino, the richness of Domino as a web application-based server, the richness of the search index that is offered inside of Domino. And we built a set of APIs that allow us to do things to and from connections on premises. Most importantly, the connections profile information is absolutely something that Barry sort of mentioned it as optional. I would never consider it optional for me personally. There's just too much value in being able to see profile data right from within Verse. So we have a set of APIs that allow for the pushing and receiving of connections profile information, whether it's your photo or the things about where you work and what you do, all the stuff that you're thinking about. You can certainly use Verse on premises without connections. That's what Barry's point was. But to get the full benefit, to get all of the interactivity, the different things that you have as a result of having connections sort of wired in there for you, man, it just makes it such a nice environment. So that's the whole set of APIs that we have built to go back and forth between the Domino environment and the Connections environment. You see some release numbers there. Those are minimal. You got to be at Connections 5.5. You got to be at CR1 level. I don't think we've done CR2. We may have done CR2. I think we have on Connections, but you've got to be at the the most current cumulative refresh level, whatever that is. And then Barry talked also about the viewer capability. We got that from the integration that Connections on-premises has with Docs, and you've got to be at the most current CR level of Docs from the viewer perspective as well. That's all packaged in a blue box for you, essentially. You don't have to worry about anything extra. You don't have to worry about, do I have all the parts? Do I need a bunch of additional servers? No, you don't. It's essentially taking your Domino environment and wiring it up to your Connections environment through these APIs. We provide the verse code, right? Everything inside of a blue box that you see there is essentially existing componentry that we are reusing, a few extra things in there, but essentially things that we are reusing to bring this capability to you. So that's a high-level sort of hand-wave kind of discussion about Verse from an architectural perspective. As Barry indicated, we've got a couple of sessions that connect that we're going to dive in a heck of a lot more deeply. We actually have a lab, hands-on lab that a couple of our colleagues will be basically sitting down with you and taking you through the configuration and installation of a Verse on-premises environment from soup to nuts. So that's got a lot of expectation and anticipation around that particular session at Connect. All right, go to the next slide there, Barry. The thing to remember is that we are being very prescriptive around platform support for this capability. So if you're thinking about iSeries, or you're thinking about something beyond Windows or something beyond Linux from a back-end perspective, don't. We're supporting only Windows and Linux at this point. I can't promise any additional platform expansion. It's just simply it's not that we don't have a lot of users that are interested in additional platform support, whether it's AIX or iSeries or fill in the blank. But we are, at least right out of the gate here, limiting our support from a platform perspective to environments that are either Windows-based or Linux-based. So keep that in mind as you explore this. You've got to have the latest and greatest of Domino, the FixPack 7 that went out last September. There's actually a couple of hot fixes that have to go on top of FixPack 7 that are required to make Verse on-premises do what it does. We'll catch up all of those interim. We now call them feature packs, not fixed packs, but we'll catch up all of those little hot fixes for on top of FP7. We'll roll all that together into an FP8 update that lands. I think Barry's got it slated for around March of this year. But you've got to be on the latest and greatest in order to take advantage of Verse on-premises. All right, next slide. I think I've pretty much hit this. I'll sum this slide up by saying that the statement here around consistency still applies. The consistency not only in user experience versus cloud as compared to Verse on-premises. We're shooting for consistency there, but we're also shooting for consistency in things like what we call the non-functionals, right? Browser support. So whatever browsers are supported in the cloud are the same browsers that we're going to support in the on-premises world. We're working. You don't see Safari 10 on there, for example. We're working on Safari 10 right now, but that's a fairly complete list from a browser's perspective of what we are actually supporting with Verse on-premises. Language support. This is a great place to point out again where we benefit from cloud. All of the language translation stuff that goes on from a cloud perspective. I think we support 31, maybe as many as 33 languages in cloud. Same languages will be supported in Verse on-premises. So it's a good story from that perspective. All right, next slide. We've got a couple of minutes here for some questions. I certainly can take a few. Before we jump into some Q&A, and Tim, I'll flip it back to you here in just a second.
Sure.
I want to tell you that there are some things that we we got right to the end of our development cycle for the first release of Verse, and there's some things that we pulled back on. Right, we thought it was more important to get the product in market than to get it in market with all of the bells and whistles. So we held off on some of the bells and whistles. And what I'll update you on in Connect in February is what those bells and whistles are and where they're going to be coming in to Verse On-Premises over the course of the first and second half of 2017. You saw on one of Barry's slides an example of what I'm talking about would be things like same-time integration. We made a decision at the very last minute to hold back on same-time integration, not because it's not important. It's because we essentially ran out of time from a development perspective. But that doesn't mean we're not going to do same-time integration. So some items like that are things that we're going to turn right back around. In fact, we are putting in the product as we speak. So don't worry if you think that, oh, gee, this isn't as complete as what Verse Cloud is. There is considerable effort underway to make sure that some of those gaps that we specifically chose to create at the end of 2016 are closed here early in 2017 as we march through on development.
Okay,
so with that, I'll pause, and Tim, flip it over to you.
Sure, thanks. We have a bunch of questions. First is there going to be any 32-bit support for Windows in the future? That was from Sean Gibbs. My suspicion is that with the operating systems that you listed, probably not.
Barry, you want to take that one?
I'll take that one. So we are actually looking to drop 32-bit support across all platforms in future feature packs. We will keep, in feature pack 8, we will keep Windows 32-bit support. There's a couple of factors there that require us to keep the 32-bit support for Windows. At least on the Domino side, we will not look at that for Verse On-Prem. One of the factors is that the community server for same time that would be required for limited use, we have not ported that to 64-bit yet. And we also know that from an application perspective, a lot of our customers may have hooks or DLLs that make calls to 32-bit Windows applications. Our plan is to look into that in the future, but we are going to drop Linux and some of the AIX and some of the other flavors of 32-bit in the upcoming feature pack. So good question, but that's where we're looking at.
Okay, brilliant. Next one came from Mr. Peterson. He wants to know about integration with activities and connections in cloud and on-premise. Is there any plans for that?
It's not on our roadmap at this point. There's some integration with some other things that are going to be announced at Connect, but at this point, we've specifically made the decisions not to muddy the water by bringing activities into Verse itself. You can make an argument where we probably ought to consider that and think about that, and I'm not saying that's a never-ever thing, but I'm saying right now there's some other things that we think are a little more innovative and a little higher on our list in terms of priority where we're focusing.
Okay. Roberto Boccadero and I had the same question. We've both installed Verse On-Premises. I know that because we've been talking in the Champions chat about it on Skype. And right now it seems that the files integration with Connections seems to be broken, and we wondered if that should work, and if so, what do we do to fix it, or are you going to fix that in a future drop of the code?
Yeah. That is oddly enough, that is one of the pieces that at the very not the very last minute, we made a tough decision to pull back on turning on the files integration. It's a little bit. This is one of those moments where you kind of go, God, why did we do that? Why did we not just put a shit over the line? And the reality was we weren't pleased with the performance that we were seeing. And instead of putting it out there in a performant way, Tim, it's more than, it's not broken, it's just not turned on. You don't have access to it. You have access to your local file system, but we have specifically not turned it on. Will we be turning it on? Yes, that is the very top priority for the first update that you'll see this quarter for Verse On-Premises. So we know it's not there, but I'd rather put it on the back shelf than give you a lousy experience from a performance perspective. So hang tight on that one.
That's
play
good
with the
to
other
know.
stuff, Verse. Yeah, play with the other stuff. And the files integration will come soon.
All right, cool. We have a bunch of others. Verse versus iNotes. Can you have both? Now, I know that I can have both, and if I click on the calendar icon at the top of Verse right now for Verse On-Premise, it takes me to the iNotes version of the calendar. So somebody else has been asking about the calendar UI, so I'll tie those two questions together. Right now, I believe you can have both iNotes or Verse, and you can switch between the two as you like, but is there going to be a better calendar UI in Verse?
There's going to be an awesome calendar UI in Verse. I forget who it was, which slide it was on that at the very beginning of our call today talked about calendar inbox becoming available in cloud later on this month. It is a superb calendar experience, and all indications are that we'll turn that on here in just a matter of a week or two for cloud, and that is in a close second in terms of priorities for what we'll be bringing to Verse On-Premises as well. The calendar inbox relies heavily on some of the APIs that are part and parcel to Solr. We're doing a bit of a translation of those APIs in order to bring calendar inbox into the Verse On-Premises experience. But no, I get it. Everybody is one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get is, hey, I don't want to see the old iNotes calendar. I want to see the new calendar UI that's coming to the Verse. It'll be there. We're just not quite ready to make it available yet. So, but it's coming.
Okay.
It's coming.
Follow-on question to that then is there going to be the ability to show other calendars like ICS feeds or other people's calendars in that calendar, just like you can do in Notes today?
Yep, you guys are stealing all my thunder for Connect, but
you don't have to answer.
The ability to do calendar delegation is huge. The ability to do calendar overlay. I scream and rant and rave about the lack that we have of ICS or iCal support in Verse today. All the time, every one of those is underway from a development perspective. So all of that is coming. We know those gaps well. Okay,
we'll roll on then.
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
No, I was going to say I have the overall ownership of Verse, but then across the team we have different technical leads that own parts and pieces. Calendar happens to be one that falls under my daily supervision, and it's top of mind for me. I have other colleagues, Barry and I have other colleagues that drive other pieces of some of the Verse work that's going on, but calendar is one that it's intimately familiar with, and we've got a lot queued up and coming for that.
Awesome. Okay, so not many other questions unless anybody else is going to put some into the chat, but one of them is, does this still work for mail-in databases? Now, my assumption is because a mail-in database would normally be a mail file, or if it isn't, then it could be. You can surface any mail file in Verse, right?
Sure. Yep. Okay. Yeah, there's no
cool.
distinction. The question behind the question is, what are you doing with shared mailboxes, though? And that's
maybe, or is it, if I have an application that has mail-in, can I surface that Verse interface to that mail-in or that mailed-in piece of that database?
So, were you talking application, or are you talking about?
I think the question behind that is actually, can I put a Verse interface into an application?
Can I put a Verse interface into an application? I don't know how to answer that. Let's hold that one, and let me go. I'll have you an answer at Connect, but off the cuff, I would say probably not at this point.
All right.
But I'll do some digging on that.
I think there was a calendar delegation also question as well.
Yep. Calendar and mail delegation. Our calendar delegation is underway. Development-wise, has been for quite some time. We'll be showcasing that at Connect. Mail delegation follows on its heels quite closely. It will come a bit later in 2017, but yeah, delegation is just about there for calendars.
Okay, cool. And the last one is, and I think Barry's already answered this in the chat, but I want to make sure that everyone's aware of this. Is there is on the roadmap, is there the ability to extend the 14-day offline capability?
So what would be the magic number from your perspective? I'm not sure who asked the question, but is it...
that was asked by Andreas. I don't know what the magic number is, so maybe, Andreas, you could pop that into the chat for us right now. Tell us what your magic number is. In multiples of 7, please, so test for your 7 times table.
The way I'll address it is that we can certainly extend that. There is some concern with if you do this in a cloud environment, we're not trying to reproduce replication. If you do this in a cloud environment and say we make the mail cache unlimited, you introduce 2 concerns, right? You introduce the size of the cache that you're creating in the browser. That's one challenge. The other one is if it's not a replication model, which it's not really, it's a synchronization model, and they're different. But if you're introducing that massive synchronization capability, say I want 30 days or 90 days of mail or whatever, you introduce some potential performance and bottleneck I/O challenges on the server side of that. So we're real sensitive to that from a cloud perspective. In an on-premises world, I'll give you an example. We have another product that is that allows you to essentially take an Outlook experience and go against the cloud or go against Domino, right? We used to call it Hawthorne. Familiar with that product? We're just now starting to take the lid off, or sort of open the lid to how much mail I can accumulate in my local cache for Outlook. For example, 30 days is sort of the next notch. That seems to be a number that everybody is kind of interested in. When I talk about this and we talk about it in an unlimited fashion, people are like, no, I don't want everything, but 2 weeks, 14 days is not quite enough. So, long answer, I know, but I would say that you can expect us to continue to tweak that and open that lid further and further as we march forward here. Where it ends up, I don't know. 30 days wouldn't surprise me, though, if that ends up being a workable number.
Okay, we are out of time, so I just want to say a huge thank you to Leon Beckett, Chris Moore, Barry Rosen, and you, Scott Souder, for your time today. It's been a great session. I hope everyone here has enjoyed it and got a lot of value out of it. Clearly, there's lots to see at Connect and lots to come in terms of Verse On-Premise. I can't wait to see you guys in a month, month and a bit in San Francisco. I'm looking forward to this. I have to say that I'm using Verse On-Premise myself, and I haven't turned my notes client on in a couple of weeks now. So thank you very much is my comment on that. Thank you everyone for joining us. This replay will be available on YouTube in a week or 2. Thanks very much, guys, and see you all soon.